Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you some uplifting stories in these trying times. For our first story, of all the things that you could do in New Jersey, seeing the world's largest functioning model train meandering on its own museum probably doesn't immediately come to mind. But thanks to a man who isn't even an enthusiast of this glorious creation, saved it from ruin. Bruce Williams Zacino, a resident of Flemington, New Jersey, spent 18 years creating the technological marvel, a building now called Northlands. But the winding tracks and breathtaking miniature scenery through which the toy train rambled eventually fell into disrepair, as the price of maintaining it inside of this large building became too high for a man who was essentially just an extraordinarily passionate hobbyist. A large warehouse, such as the Northlands, is necessary if you want to build a model train setup with more than 8 miles of track. He continued to imagine more and more artistic scenery, which led him to expand his basement 5 times. The little trains started their journey from a depot, fixed onto the track through a functioning and amazing turnstile, and then ran through a model America. They pass over bridges, spanning canyons and dusty gorges, along scenic riverways, by industrial mining pits and exquisitely detailed villages, and through tunnels carved out through miniature mountains. He began to open the basement twice a year to tours at the suggestion of his friends, allowing him to share his incredible Wonka-like creativity and imagination with others. In 1996, he made it a year-round attraction. At the point that the train exhibit included 1,200 buildings and 100 trains, the museum also included a historic American doll collection and a 2,000 pipe organ. However, such a large building created a substantial overhead, too large for him, even after opening it to the public. The project had to be abandoned. Businessman Tariq Sahal is the new owner of Northlands after he purchased it from Zacino last November when he was looking for an additional warehouse space. Sohail runs a distribution business and was told by the former owner that he could demolish what was inside. But when we saw it, we said, no way could we demolish this. What this guy built is amazing. Bruce was running it by himself, so there was a lot of wear and tear. It looked like a ghost house. We wanted to preserve it, so it was here for the people. Spurred on by this amazing place, Sohail invested $250,000 to its renovation, repairing lights, flooring, and much of the train scenery, so that the miniature world could once again delight audiences throughout the year. The renovations have also included a gift shop and private event space, with plans for a movie theater, climbing walls, and even model train set classes for the kids slated in the near future. Every single person has commented on how clean it is now and how they can see a lot more with our new lights. They like how there are more trains and the scenes aren't damaged anymore. Plus they love how there's space for them to sit and eat and host birthday parties and other events. It's a good thing it wasn't demolished. It all began around 35 years ago when Mr. Bruce Williams' first home was built in 1972. During the construction work, there were many things that were left by the builders overnight. Mr. Bruce started erecting some scenes in his basement with mud and sand and other types of materials. Workers returning the next morning would remove these miniature structures to continue their work. However, they became a great admirer of his talent. With appreciation, they encouraged Mr. Bruce to continue his work and make a separate space for it. This resulted in a fourth addition to the basement of his Flemington area home. Impressed by his work, his friends persuaded him to host an annual train show for a local charity. This was a great success that soon led to him to open his exhibits for the general public on the weekends, and later resulted in the world's largest railroad in a miniature wonderland. The coverage of the national, as well as the international TV channels, including German, Swedish, and Japan, contributed to its growing popularity. Thus was born the idea for a year-round attraction. Today, Northlands is a 16-acre world-class attraction along with art, music, and doll displays, doll museum, La Peep dollhouse, and 2,000 pipe theater organ pipe, which Bruce plays, and art galleries throughout. There is also an 1890s replica narrow-gauge system for the train rides. The building is reflective of the couple's lifelong commitment to art, expression, and creativity. Over the years, Northlands has become his favorite destination for people of all ages. Not only has it offered something so unique for tourists, but the people around the world visit the place where they can come to New Jersey. A couple of interesting facts about Northlands. There's about 2,600,000 figures, over 100 bridges, over 200 dolls, about 50,000 square feet. There's over 1,000 buildings. There's 8 miles of train track in length. There is a full-size outside train, 400 tunnels, 200 plus doll houses, an art gallery, and about 250,000 trees. And out of the 80,000 visitors that come every year, a few of them post on the Facebook page, so I'll read you one of those. I'm going to recommend it to my school principal and see if we can arrange a class trip. That's how much I loved it there. I loved Northlands, and I cannot wait to return. There's even an area to go eat, sit, relax, have a free coffee, kids laughing. I was overjoyed. We were shown another area to pick up brochures so that many places to visit in the future. There was an overall wonderful experience. Thank you so much, Northlands, for one of the most wonderful days ever. We loved it. So without the help of this businessman purchasing the area and then agreeing to keep it open, this place wouldn't have thrived like it used to. And now it's a place that New Jerseyans can go and enjoy. And it's a great tourist attraction now that brings in money to the economy. And none of that would have been possible for not the generosity of the man who bought it in the first place. So I really, really liked this story. And I thought it was quite interesting, all of the records and everything. So if you are interested in visiting it, it is open in New Jersey, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And yeah, go check it out. It sounds like a really cool way to spend a day. When we return from our break, we are going to move to the state of Washington, where they've joined the efforts to create a greener and more sustainable America for us all. So I hope you stick around after the break so we can get into some of that. Stay tuned, please.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. So when we left, we were talking about some generous businessman that had donated the space that he purchased to maintain a train replica, a miniature replica that has now become a thriving tourist destination for people in New Jersey. And now in other vehicular news, the state of Washington is moving swiftly to spark a clean transportation revolution, which will target the state's biggest source of carbon emissions, gasoline-powered engines. This week, the Senate voted 26 to 23 to pass SB 5811, a bill that would enable Washington to join the National Zero Emissions Vehicle Program. 11 states currently participate in the Zero Emissions Vehicle Program, which requires a minimum percentage of the passenger vehicles supplied by automakers to be electric. By putting the responsibility on the automakers to make electric vehicles available, the program tries to avoid fiscal impact on taxpayers. So a little bit more info on that. The ZEV program has proven to decrease the cost of electric vehicles to purchase or lease while increasing the selection available. If passed, the bill would enable the state to join the ZEV program, which requires about 6% of all cars stocked at dealerships to be electric by 2022. The first year, the measure could go into full effect. Automakers do not meet the threshold would need to buy credits from other automaker or pay a penalty. Last year, the legislation passed in the Senate, but stalled in the House. In the Environment and Energy Committee, chaired by Representative Joe Fitzgibbon. This year, however, Representative Fitzgibbon affirms that his strong commitment to passing the bill and joining California, Colorado, Connecticut, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Oregon, Rhode Island, and Vermont. A diverse coalition of more than 40 organizations also support the bill, including the state's leading environmental organizations, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the American Lung Association, Tesla, and ChargePoint. Additionally, the House Transportation Committee is set to schedule a hearing on a bill that would require all new vehicles sold in Washington state to be electric starting 2030. The bill is sponsored by the Representative Nicole Macri and co-sponsored by Fitzgibbon and 5 other legislators, and is patterned on a vehicle electrification policies announced by approximately 15 different countries. It requires all model year 2030 or later passenger vehicles sold in Washington state to be electric. People could keep, sell, and purchase model year 2029 and prior gasoline vehicles without restriction. Emergency response vehicles and vehicles over 10,000 pounds, such as farm equipment, would be exempt. Switching to local electricity to power our cars will improve our air quality, save residents of Washington billions of dollars in fuel and maintenance costs, boost our economy, and create jobs. Bill supporters say the legislation will incentivize private sector investments into new electronic vehicles and charging stations without imposing significant additional burdens to the state budget or the taxpayers. The program from California state regulation requires that automakers sell electronic cars and trucks in California and 10 other states. The exact number of vehicles is linked to the automaker's overall gasoline and diesel sales within the state. The program's objective is to ensure that automakers research, develop, and market electronic vehicles which generate fewer global warming emissions than gas-powered cars. The California Air Resources Board manages the ZEF EV program, although it has been adopted by 10 other states. By directly requiring that automakers invest in clean technology, the program is considered one of the nation's most forward-looking climate policies and a driving force behind expanding market with over 40 zero-emission models available to the U.S. public in 2019. So what exactly is a zero-emission vehicle? Vehicles considered zero-emission through varying degrees. A plug-in hybrid vehicle combines conventional gasoline-powered engines with a battery that can be recharged from an electric grid. Battery electric vehicles run entirely on electricity and can be recharged from an electric grid. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles run on electricity produced from a fuel cell using hydrogen gas. How the regulation works. The ZEV program assigns each automaker the credits. Automakers are required to maintain credits equal to a set percentage of non-electric sales. Each car sold earns a number of credits based on the type of vehicle and its battery range. The credit requirement is 7% in 2019, which will require about 3% of sales to be zero-emission vehicles. The credit required to rise to 22% in 2025 that still have an engine, and in 2019, plug-in hybrid vehicles can only account for 43% of credits, meaning at least 57 must originate from the battery electric vehicles or hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. For example, an automaker selling 100,000 cars in California would need at least 7,000 credits, with at least 4,000 coming from battery electric or fuel cell vehicle sales. However, this does not mean that they'll need to sell 7,000 electric cars and trucks to comply. Here's the formula. Automakers can earn credits by selling zero-emission cars and trucks. The credit per vehicle varies with the drivetrain type and electric range. From 2018 onward, plug-in hybrids receive between 0.4 and 1.3 credits per vehicle sold. Battery and electronic on fuel cell vehicles receive between 1 and 4 credits based on range. Manufacturers are allowed to carry over excess credits from one year to the next, and this is called banking. The practice has grown since 2012 thanks to extra credits and sales in California that outpaced the relatively low regulatory starting requirements. In addition, automakers can purchase or trade ZEV credits from other manufacturers. So all of these regulations and emissions and regulations are really going to help create a cleaner environment for us. So it's nice to hear that other states are getting on board with this as well. Quite a few states are involved in this initiative, and here's hoping that more will get involved so we can get less emissions and have cleaner air in America. That would be pretty incredible and pretty beautiful. When we come back from the break, a sanctuary for homeless women.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back. When we left, we were talking about the efforts made to clean up the air in America with a zero-emission vehicle initiative. And now we are going to talk about some amazing generosity in California and a new initiative to help homeless women. So in Oakland, the Oakland residents have transformed an abandoned lot into a sanctuary for camping homeless women. California's housing crisis is hitting especially lower income communities harder than ever. As rent prices continue to rise, stemming from the endless interjections of a big tech money into areas like San Francisco and Oakland, according to The Guardian, the number of homeless encampments within the city of Oakland outnumbers the square kilometers that make up the city. At the corner of 37th Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Way, this community of housed and unhoused citizens are creating reasons for people to change their attitude towards the often embattled encampments. 37 MLK was just a vacant Oakland lot of overgrown weeds squared away by tattered chain link fencing in the northwest part of town, where Stefani of Everenchera Fen, a local resident, walked on her way to work. Stefani experienced homelessness herself. As a queer teenager growing up in New York, her conservative parents kicked her out, and she had to navigate the shelter system through her youth. When she moved to San Francisco Bay Area for a fellowship at the University of California, Berkeley in 2009, she struggled to find an apartment. Even with a documented source of income, because she had no rental history. This neighborhood, it was my stepping stone out of homelessness, she said. When I came out here in 2009, there were still landlords willing to rent cheap apartments with no questions asked. I could get an apartment for $800 with a $500 security deposit, a one-bedroom, and still live in that apartment to this day because I have rent control. Now identical units to mine go for over $2,000 a month. I see the way I climbed out of homelessness. The door closed behind me. In the decade since she moved to Oakland, cities in the Bay Area have seen rapid transformation. Tech money has flooded the region, changing the landscape irrevocably amid a rapid gentrification. San Francisco saw only a 17% increase in its homeless population last year. Oakland saw a 47% increase from 2017 and an 85% increase from 2015. The uptick in numbers has meant that more people were visibly homeless, inciting tensions between the housed and unhoused, on a local level on its way to the White House. In July, real estate developer tried to shoot $1,000 bills over at homeless encampment in Oakland in a humiliating attempt to get the residents to leave, despite the fact that they had nowhere else to go. In the shadow of staggering tech wealth, housed and unhoused residents, local lawmakers, and housing advocates have been looking for drastic solutions to the immediate crisis at hand. Oakland rolled out its controversial Tough Shed experiment, housing homeless people into makeshift structures that resemble tool sheds. The Oakland City Council president last month proposed docking a cruise ship to the city's port to act as emergency housing akin to a refugee crisis after disaster. Every single day for the past decade I've lived here, I walked on my way to work past this vacant lot, this eyesore, this blight that was never put to good use in the community, said Stefani. Meanwhile, you would see tents go up just a half block down there. You see people literally sleeping on the side of the street, on the side of freeways. Today, it's become far more than that. A homeless encampment is a homeless sanctuary. There's a solar shower, a garden that grows food and flowers, and a communal kitchen and dining table, camping toilets, and a pump-operated sink, all of which are maintained and kept clean by the campers and the community, mostly homeless black women. The little community feels protected inside the fencing, and the walkways between the tents are lined with solar power lights and mini white picket fences. The women also keep chickens, which provide eggs and they also help keep insect and rodent populations under control. Stefani and other household neighbors do their part to take care of the community by providing the services that 37 MLK cannot provide for them, such as trash and waste disposal. There are allegations that homeless people are dirty or they don't keep the space clean, Stefani said. The only reason that we're clean and other encampments are dirty, we have actual access to trash facilities, and we do have access to running water that other encampments don't. While the police have been called twice in the community's history, among the residents there's a sense of collective responsibility, with regular meetings held to discuss cleanliness, and to remind everyone that noise or blight complaints could lead to the dismantling of their quiet and peaceful way of life. Oakland City Council members recognize the role that camps like the 37 MLK may play in the tackling of the homeless epidemic now, while the much-needed affordable housing is erected. Recently, $600,000 was allocated to the pilot project based on the 37 MLK model in an Oakland district. There are simply spaces that people may need to stay in for 2 to 5 years, not a matter of months, Nikki Fortunato-Boss, a local lawyer heading up the project, said to The Guardian. And we need to be able to house them in a way that's healthy, safe, dignified. The homelessness and housing affordability crisis has grown to just an extent where we can no longer ignore it. You juxtapose that with stories like 37 MLK being incredibly creative and inspiring, and a successful story of unsheltered older black women. I think we have to draw from the human resilience and creativity that we're seeing from people who are in deep crisis and respond to the same level from the government. Respond to that level of creativity, urgency. If you want to follow this, you can follow 37 MLK on Facebook, where posts report semi-frequently about the goings-on in the community, how local housing residents can help if they feel inspired to. Maybe just visiting and saying hello, or maybe taking a bag of garbage when you leave. Just realize that these are people that have fallen on hard times, and they need our help as much as we can. One post about it on Facebook: we're even more beautiful and peaceful at night. With our solar lights and cafe tables, we're awakening from the nightmare of homelessness in America to an ethnic block of caring for the block. Don't ask permission to exist anymore. Realize that we should all be thanking God for how lucky we are to save these houseless survivor elders in our communities in the first place. When we come back, we're going to talk about some more generosity from Americans helping out people that need help. This time, we're going to talk about how we are helping our veterans by partnering up with them when we return from the break.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. When we left for break, we were talking about the homeless community that was built in Oakland to help homeless women recover and get back on their feet. And now we're talking about another initiative to help people in need. This time, it's our veterans. Hundreds of Americans become foster families to ailing senior veterans, opening up their hearts and their homes. Today in the United States, more than 82,000 veterans live in nursing homes, probably not the kind of conditions or end-of-life care that would warm the hearts of veterans who'd served gallantly in Korea and Vietnam. However, the Medical Foster Home Program, launched by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs in 2008, has been providing opportunities for much more comfortable life to senior veterans who can't live alone by allowing American families to open up their doors to the nation's heroes. A medical foster home can serve as an alternative to a nursing home for veterans who require nursing and at-home care but prefer a non-institutional setting with fewer risks, says the website. This was certainly the case for Korean War vet Stuart Breeding, who resigned himself to spending the remainder of his life at a nursing institution after his wife died in 2016. 2 years later, Donna and Benny Nolan became DVA certified medical foster family and surprised Breeding on his 86th birthday with a cake, balloons, and a room full of well-wishers who celebrated the news that he could move in with them. "I want to live here with Donna and Benny until the day I die," Breeding told the Washington Post. "I love everything about this family. It's a great place to be." According to the Post, Donna Nolan, who's a part of an Air Force family, knew she wanted to be part of the program as soon as she heard about the program in 2016. Her husband Benny, a veteran of the Gulf War himself, a former Army blacksmith and railroad engineer who worked as a communications specialist for 20 years, felt exactly the same way. "It's an honor to have them living with us," Benny said. "Nurturing has always been a part of my life, and Donna's life too." The program Homes for Heroes launched in 2008 and now has a presence in 44 states, and each family in the program is allowed to take up to 3 veterans in their homes in order to give them a more comfortable and personalized care environment. The agreement is a long-term commitment, and according to Kathy Free at the Post, the veterans often live in the foster homes the remainder of their lives. The demand and desire for foster homes over institutions or nursing homes varies from state to state, but trends highest in rural areas, explains Daniel Cooper, Director of Home and Community Care in the Office of Geriatrics, Extended Care for the DVA. Most veterans want to stay in the towns where they live, a dignity which Cooper feels they certainly deserve. So the program's managers have always began the search in the vicinity of where the veterans currently live. The program has one of the highest rates of satisfaction of any post-deployment VA program. Many caregivers and vets become family. Cooper told Southern Living. They take them on vacations. We recently spoke to a family who took their veteran, a quadriplegic, camping twice a year. These are opportunities they never would have had. I thought that was a lovely story. So if you want to get involved in that, just look on the VA website and see if it's right for you. I do have another heartwarming war vet story that I wanted to share with you. This 69-year-old Vietnam veteran can finally retire now that his mortgage is paid off, and all thanks to his compassionate boss. Albert Brigus has been working as a mechanic at Rowan Auto Restoration in San Antonio, Texas, for the last 13 years. He's also been living in the same house for the last 24 years, and he's been putting off retirement so that he could finish paying off the mortgage in 2020. Brigus' boss, Rudy Quinotos, has known about the eager retirement plans. He told the news station, Albert has been grumbling about that for the past year. His ultimate goal was to retire and have his house paid off. So as means of expressing his gratitude for all the years of his hard work, Rudy called Brigus into his office last month and wrote his dedicated employee check for $5,000 to pay off the rest of the mortgage. Since paying off the house and retiring, Brigus is happy to report that he now has more than enough time to spend with his wife and his grandkids. And Rudy is simply happy that he could repay his former employee for all of his dedication. To give them something that they've been yearning for their whole lives. It's incredible, Rudy said. I think it's really important to continue to share these stories and these things that are happening to benefit our veterans, because it's so easy for once they've finished, it's very hard to or very easy, I suppose, to forget that they've been, that they need help, to come back into our society. And little things like this, little things like the check that Rudy wrote may not have, impacted his life too much, but really changed the life of Albert and, was able to give him his retirement and his years with his wife, and I think that that's really beautiful. And as for the program Homes for Heroes, I just think how incredible that is, because you don't think, fostering children you think of all the time, but fostering the elderly that require quite a bit of care as well, maybe the same as children in a lot of cases. We don't often think about that. So it's nice that this program has thought about that, and not only the care and the medical attention and things like that, but also just the sense of home and family that you don't necessarily get in a nursing home, and just feeling like you're a part of the home rather than you're imposing on the home. You're being welcomed in and things like that. So I really thought this was a lovely one, and I hope you did too. When we come back, we're going to talk about the cancer rates in the U.S. declining. So, this is great news, obviously, and we're going to talk about that as soon as we come back from the break. So stay tuned.
pets bring such joy to our lives, and the GSMC Pets podcast is here to share in that joy. We'll tell stories of pets finding their forever homes, acting in unexpected ways, being helpful, or just being silly. Whether you love dogs, cats, llamas, reptiles, fish, or you've never met an animal you didn't like, the GSMC Pets podcast is for you.
Welcome back. So when we left off, we were talking about some lovely things that are happening to help our veterans, both with homes and with family, and to become themselves again. And now we're going to talk about something else. So U.S. cancer rates have continued to decline, with the largest ever single-year drop in cancer mortality. Fewer and fewer people are dying from cancer in the United States every year, with this year showing the single highest drop in cancer mortality ever reported. Cancer death rate has declined by 29% from 1991, including a 2.2% drop from last year. Overall, cancer death rates have dropped by an average of 1.5 per year, and so the cancer mortality rate has completely dropped over time by 29%. The drop translates to approximately 2.9 million fewer cases of cancer and death that would have occurred if the mortality rates remained at their peak. Continuing declining in cancer mortality contrast with stable trend for other causes of death combined, reflecting a slower decline for heart disease, stabilizing rates for cerebrovascular disease, an increasing trend for accidents and Alzheimer's disease. The 26-year decline in overall cancer mortality is driven by long-term drops in death rates in 4 major cancers: lung, colorectal, breast, and prostate, although recent trends are more mixed. The pace of mortality reductions for lung cancer, the leading cause of cancer death, accelerated in recent years, spurring the record's 1-year drop in overall cancer mortality. In contrast, progress slowed for the other 3 cancers. The news comes from Cancer Statistics 2020, the latest edition of the American Cancer Society Annual Report on Cancer Rates and Trends. Lung cancer death rates have dropped by 51% since 1990 in men, and 26% since 2002 in women, with the most rapid progression in recent years. For example, the reductions in mortality accelerated from 3% per year during 2008 to 2013 to 5% per year from 2013 to 2017 in men, and 2% to almost 4% in women. However, lung cancer still accounts for almost 1/4 of cancer deaths, more than breast, prostate, and colorectal cancers combined. The most rapid declines in mortality occurred from melanoma of the skin, of the heels, breakthrough treatments approved in 2011 that pushed the 1-year survival rate in patients diagnosed with metastatic disease in 42% during 2008 to 2010, and to to 55% during 2013 to 2015. Progress is likewise reflected by the overall melanoma death rate, which dropped by 7% during the years 2013 to 17 in people aged 20 to 64, compared to declines during 2006 to 2010, prior to the FDA approval of a couple of different drugs. Of the 2% to 3% per year in those ages 20 to 49, and the 1% per year in those aged 50 to 64, even more striking are the mortality declines of 5% to 6% in individuals 65 and older, among whom rates were previously increasing. So highlights from the report: the death rate for breast cancer dropped by 40%, the death rate by prostate cancer has dropped by 52%, and the death rate for colorectal cancer dropped by 53% amongst males and 57% amongst female. Decades-long rapid increase in liver cancer mortality appear to be abating in both men and women. Progress for hematophytic and lymphoid malignancies have been especially rapid due to improvements in treatment protocols, including the development of targeted therapies. The 5-year relative survival rate for chronic myeloid leukemia increased from 22% in the mid-1970s to 70% for those diagnosed during 2009 through to 2015, and most patients treating with tyrosine kinase inhibitors now experience normal life expectancy. The overall cancer incident report: men declined rapidly, but stabilized through 2016. Cancer survival has improved since the mid-1970s for all of the most common cancers, except for cervical and uterine cancers. Stagnant survival rates for those cancers largely reflect a lack of major treatment advances for patients with recurrent and metastatic disease. The accelerated drops in lung cancer mortality as well as melanoma that we're seeing are likely due to the least, in part, advances in cancer treatment over the past decade, such as immunotherapy, says William C. Kantz, a chief medical and scientific officer at the American Cancer Society. They are a profound reminder of how rapidly this area of research is expanding and now leading to real hope for cancer patients. And this is all from the American Cancer Society. So those are absolutely huge advancements made in the research of in cancer research and in statistics of cancer research. So that's very good news and very exciting. And so this is a great one, and I hope we're all excited about where the future of cancer research is going. When we come back, some good news in the history of today's date when we return.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
left off, we were talking about the advancements in medical research and how great that is becoming. And now we're going to do our good news in today's history. I'm recording this on the 7th, so that's going to be all of the news from the 7th of February in history. 80 years ago today, Walt Disney's second feature-length film, Pinocchio, premiered. Based on Italian children's novel, the animated Disney involves an old woodmaker named Geppetto, who carves a wooden puppet named Pinocchio. The puppet is brought back to life by a blue fairy, who informs him that he can be a real boy if he proves himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. With the help of Jiminy Cricket, his wise guide, he sets off on adventures towards his goal. Even with his highly realistic hand-drawn animation effects, the movie was a box office flop, but today, it's considered amongst Disney's finest productions. Now, this happened on today's date in 1940. 80 years ago today. That's pretty crazy, right? So what else today? On today's date, in 1812, Charles Dickens was born. Tasmania created the first law anywhere providing secret ballots for elections in 1856. So you no longer had to show who you were voting for. Charlie Chaplin first appeared as the Tramp in the comedy film Kid Auto Races at Venice in 1914. The whimsical, rambling English comedian, actor, writer, and political activist Eddie Izzard was born in 1962 on today's date. Switzerland women gained the right to vote in, wait for it, 1971, which is quite a bit later on than a lot of the world. So that one kind of surprised me a little bit. Grenada gained independence in 1974. U.S. astronauts performed the first untethered spacewalk, which lasted nearly 6 hours, in 1984. The Soviet Communist Party gave up control and it allowed its other political parties to compete. In 1990, on today's date, Haiti's first elected president was sworn in after 28 years of a one-family rule in 1991. Britain's Ellen MacArthur sailed into record books as the fastest ever solo navigate around the world voyage in 2005. And on this day, in 1964, Beatlemania reached American shores, and 3,000 adoring fans caused riotous scenes at the New York airport. Beatles touched down in the U.S. for the first time, launching rock and roll's British invasion. Filmmaker Albert Maisley was given access to the band, hanging out in their hotel rooms and elsewhere during those 10 days. He captured unprecedented footage. You can see this in his documentary, if you would like to take a look at that. On this day in 1867, Laura Ingalls Wilder was born in rural Wisconsin. If you like her books, the Little House series, I know I did growing up. The author, of course, known for Little House on the Prairie and Little House in the Big Woods, etc. The children's books were based on her own childhood growing up as a settler in a pioneer family. She was married in Missouri, became an editor for a local newspaper, penning a regular column called A Farm Woman Thinks. When she was nearly 65 years old, her first book, Little House in the Big Woods, was published. Also, it's a happy birthday to Ashton Kutcher, who turns 42 today, an actor and producer, first seen in the sitcom That 70s Show, made his film debut in the romantic comedy Coming Soon, and made a real name for himself. The 2000 film, Dude, Where's My Car? used his popularity on Twitter to reach 1 million followers to promote a mission with his ex-wife Demi Moore to eliminate sex trafficking and child exploitation. A proud moment for him. On this day in 1919, Desmond Doss, the U.S. Army corporal who saved 75 men while refusing to carry a weapon during one of the worst battles of World War II, was born in Lynchburg, Virginia. Raised a devout Seventh-day Adventist Christian, volunteered to serve as a combat medic so that he could save lives instead of take lives. For his heroism beyond the call of duty, he was twice awarded the Bronze Star and won the most prestigious Medal of Honor. A conscientious objector who would not kill the enemy, his story was told in the 2016 Oscar-nominated film Hacksaw Ridge. Before placing the Medal of Honor around the young man's neck, President Harry Truman read a long citation of his bravery on the Japanese island of Okinawa. When the 1st Battalion of the 77th Infantry Division assaulted a jagged escarpment 400 feet high, they drew heavy artillery, motor and machine gun fire that left 75 casualties and drove the Americans back. Private First Class Doss refused to seek cover and remained in the fire-swept area with many stricken, carrying them one by one to the edge of the cliff and lowering them on a rope-supported ladder down the face to the friendly hands below. He later said his constant prayer was, "Lord, help me get one more." Days later, he exposed himself to heavy rifle and mortar fire in rescuing a wounded man 200 yards forward of the lines, and 2 days later, he treated 4 men who had been cut down while assaulting a strongly defended cave, advancing through the shower and grenades with 8 yards of enemy forces in a cave's mouth, where he dressed his comrades' wounds before making 4 separate trips under fire to evacuate them safely. There is a full citation that lists all of his incredible deeds, including eventually being badly injured, yet directing medics to go care for others on the battlefield instead. At a 2003 Florida conference of Seventh-day Adventists, officials presented Doss with a trophy and told a story about the Bible his wife had given him years earlier on their wedding day. After reaching the hospital to ship treated for injuries offshore, he noticed his portable Bible was missing from his pocket, though he carried it through most battles. He asked that it be sent to the Company B soldiers to look for it. The men who'd once considered him a coward because of his nonviolence searched the blowed-up terrain, and a mini miracle found the treasured keepsake and returned it to him. There is beauty in America. Let's try harder to see it. Thank you for listening to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please subscribe to the show and write a nice review. And rate the episode. That really helps us. Also, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From social media news to marketing news and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast.